Journey to the Past, Chapter 2, Part 1. Author's Notes. Warning for very brief speculation about suicide at the beginning of this chapter. Izuku hasn't seen his friends in a while. He saw them during the holidays. They had seemed different. The way they looked at him, the way they spoke to him, it had been different. They always seemed a little off. There was something about them that he couldn't put his finger on. But during the summer before his last year of middle school, that impression grew until Izuku had felt like there was something obvious that he was missing. School has only been back a few weeks, but already his teachers have started to talk about high school. Izuku misses his friends. Maybe they would listen and understand, and not laugh when Izuku confesses that he wants to go to UA. They wouldn't get that flint-eyed smile their teacher wears when Izuku submits his preferences to UA, like he thinks Izuku is a particularly small and amusing bug that's bashed itself on his window. They wouldn't crowd around him and snarl like Kacchan. Kacchan has been getting twitchy now that high school applications are coming up. He's determined to make something of himself, just like Izuku, but sometimes Kacchan doesn't think.
Take a swan dive off the roof.
What would have happened if Izuku actually had? What would have happened to Kacchan's dream, then? Izuku shakes his journal again. Water splatters onto his sneakers. He stares at the little wet marks, and he can't help but wonder if his childhood friends would be waiting for him up on the roof if Izuku were to wind his way up there. That's kind of a rescue, isn't it? Or maybe they would be waiting for him at the bottom. Maybe Ice Prince would freeze him to the building. Or maybe Tape Man would pluck him out of the air halfway down. Or maybe Shift Hands would be waiting at the bottom to catch him. At least then, if they did show up, Izuku could talk to them again. Izuku shoves that thought out of his head. It doesn't matter what they would or would not do, because he's not going up to the roof. He's not. He's going home. Most students have gone home for the day, but Izuku still takes a back route so he won't run into Kacchan or his friends again. He rounds the corner and realizes that the school isn't as abandoned as he thought. There's someone lounging at the back of the school, leant up against the brick wall as if he belongs there. Is there a villain? Izuku asks. Grenades tips his head to one side, considering. He's still wearing a motorbike helmet. Izuku has never seen him without it, and he sometimes wonders if Grenades has a scar or disfigurement, or if there is something about his quirk that prevents him from baring his face to the world, like the centuries-old hero Izuku read about years ago. Scott Summers, Izuku recalls. Maybe Grenades' quirk is like Scott Summers? Not right now, Grenades says. Izuku squints at him suspiciously. What are you doing here, then? Grenades snorts. You've gotten confident. Hope we didn't change too much. Izuku presses the still dripping hero journal to his chest. He can still feel the phantom touch of Kacchan's scorching fingers on his shoulder. I'm not confident. Not at all. Not yet, Grenades corrects. I'm here to keep the others off your back. I don't think they'll show up, but, well, I don't want to risk it. I thought you said there weren't any villains around. I'm not talking about villains, Grenades says. I'm talking about the others, the heroes. You're stopping the heroes from coming? Izuku is suddenly aware that he doesn't know Grenades as well as the others. He has never seen his face. Izuku reaches for his backpack. It's not much, but he could throw it at Grenades and make a run for it if he had to. A laugh scrapes its way up Grenades' throat. Calm down, brat. I'm a hero. I'm not going to hurt you. Then why? I meant that you're going to be on your own today, Grenades says. The others they're busy, okay? They're busy. So you're going to be on your own today. You don't look busy, Izuku says, and you said you were stopping the others from coming to see me, not that they couldn't come in the first place. Grenades shakes his head. He mumbles something that sounds a lot like, you little shit, under his breath, and then crouches down in front of Izuku and lays his hands on Izuku's shoulders. He's 14, too old to be treated like a toddler, but Izuku goes lax under his touch anyway, and lets Grenade's gentle hold replace the phantom feel of Kacchan's hands exploding against his body. I know this is confusing, Grenade says. Do you trust me? Along with Red, Grenades was one of the first heroes that Izuku met, but he's always seemed distant, like he doesn't want to get close to Izuku. Or, maybe, like he doesn't know how to. But Grenades has been popping in and out of his life since he was 6. If he wanted to hurt Izuku, he could have done it during those long 8 years. Izuku isn't a little kid, anyway. He can fight back now. Kind of. Yes, Izuku says. Grenades nods. Then believe me when I say the heroes can't come today. I can't explain, but... It's okay, Izuku says, and pulls on a smile. He can't see his face, but he can tell from the line of his body that Grenades is stressed, worried. Do you want to go get milkshakes? I'll pay. I have some of my allowance money left. I can't, Grenades says. I'm leaving soon. Do you understand what I'm saying, brat? You're on your own today. Grenades doesn't sound mean as he turns down Izuku's offer. He sounds urgent, almost. Okay then. I'll see you later. Grenades lets go of his shoulders and steps back. Go home, Izuku. Grenades watches him go until Izuku turns the corner and heads out of sight. Izuku stares at the ground and tries to piece together what that conversation had meant. Sometimes, the heroes will drop by without the threat of a villain attack looming over their heads. Izuku thinks that they do regular patrols, or, maybe, they come by just to spend time with him. Maybe they're doing both at once. It's hard to tell. They never fully answer his questions when he asks. But the heroes are often gone for months at a time. Izuku hasn't seen them since the holidays. He hadn't expected to see them today. So why did Grenades come to his school just to tell him that he wasn't going to get a visit from anyone else today? Izuku doesn't notice the villain until slime is wrapping around his legs. It climbs up to his chest and then his mouth and nose. Slime slips between his teeth. He can't see the villain's face, but he can hear his mean laughter. Izuku can't breathe. He can't scream for help. He claws the slime, trying to pry himself loose, but there is nothing to hold on to. The heroes can't come, Grenades had said. You're on your own today. For the first time in his life, Izuku is left at the mercy of a villain. He chokes and reaches out with one arm like he's trying to pull someone into being. His friends have always come when he's in danger. Villains are rarely able to touch him. But now, his vision is blurring out and there's slime under his tongue. It's in his throat. In his lungs. His friends aren't coming. Maybe they're never coming again. Maybe they've abandoned him. Maybe... Izuku passes out as a loud, familiar laugh echoes down the tunnel. For a moment, Izuku wonders if All Might is part of his group of heroes. Does All Might know his friends? There's something about All Might that reminds him of his childhood friends. Izuku doesn't know what it is that gives him that feeling until steam billows out in a thick cloud and All Might shrinks, and Izuku realizes he has a secret. This is why he reminds him of his friends. He's trying to hide something from Izuku. It's a different kind of secret, but a secret nonetheless. He hadn't told his friends that he was quirkless. He could never bear to bring it up, but he tells All Might. When All Might tells him no, he wishes he hadn't. He wishes he had stayed behind the shaded gymnasium with Grenades, had sat down in the dirt next to his boots, even if Grenades hadn't wanted him around. Anything would have been better than this. Kacchan is trapped in the villain's viscous body. His mouth is covered, but his eyes are screaming out for help. Izuku waits, frozen on the wrong side of the crowd, but none of his friends appear. Then he remembers, they're not going to appear. Not today. The heroes that are here aren't doing anything. Their quirks are incompatible with the villain, so they're just hovering there, watching on while Kacchan silently screams for help. For the second time that day, Izuku realizes his friends aren't coming to save him from the villain. He's alone. Kacchan's alone. His legs move on their own. All Might corners him on the street turned orange by the setting sun and offers him his quirk. After that day, Izuku is caught up in training and studying for entrance exams and talking with All Might, like he's a normal person instead of the man who helped shape society into what it is today. A month passes, then 2, then 6. One day, Izuku wakes up and realizes he hasn't seen his childhood friends in almost a year. Normally, by the time All Might makes it to the beach, Izuku is already busy straining to drag junk 4 times his size through the sand. Today, though, he's running late. All Might stares up at the trash pile as though he expects Izuku to come hurtling over the garbage. Izuku leaps over the half wall separating the beach from the street and sprints across the sand. His whole face is probably flushed from running all the way there. "Sorry," Izuku gasps out. "I'm sorry." "It's fine," All Might says. "You weren't that late, just try and be more punctual next time." Izuku dumps his backpack and rolls up his sleeves. All Might hesitates before adding, "Can I ask why you were late, though? Are you struggling to stay on top of your schoolwork? I probably wouldn't be much help with homework, since it's been so long since I was in school myself, but if you need extra time to dedicate yourself to your studies, we can look at your schedule and rearrange some things." "It's not schoolwork. It's a personal project, I guess." Izuku drops the rubber tire he had picked up and wipes his hands on his pants. "Actually, can I ask you a few questions?" "Go ahead." Izuku rifles through his backpack until he finds his well-loved notebook. He flips through it until he finds the right page and opens it up so All Might can see. "This is Floaty Girl, or, well, I call her Floaty Girl. I don't actually know her name." Izuku flips to another page. "This is Ice Prince. Again, I don't actually know his name, but Ice Prince seems to fit him." Izuku continues like that, flicking through the pages with reverence, and introduces All Might to his 19 friends. When they reach the end, Izuku holds his journal to his chest and peeks up at All Might, suddenly shy. "Do you recognize any of them? Have you met them before?" "I'm sorry," All Might says, "but no, I don't know them. Except this one." He takes Izuku's book and flips back to Almost Ingenium. This tells Izuku nothing. If he were to ask a stranger on the street to flip through his journal, they would probably pass over every one of his friends aside from Almost Ingenium, the only half-recognizable hero in the group. "Ingenium," All Might says. "He's a hero in Hosu City. I met him once or twice before, I think." "That's not him, though," Izuku points at his legs. "Ingenium has engines in his arms, while this hero, this Almost Ingenium, has engines in his legs. Plus, his armor is slightly different." "Hero costumes change over the years," All Might says. "A hero's suit may look very different 10 years down the road. Are you sure that this person you encountered had engines in their legs? Maybe you made a mistake. Memories can be tricky things." "It's not a mistake," Izuku says. "Well, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. Stranger danger and all that. I didn't read it online." Izuku takes his book back. "Thanks, anyway, All Might. It was a reach to think that I could answer all my questions at once by asking someone else after all these years of researching. It was stupid of me." Izuku had known All Might probably wouldn't be able to tell him anything. None of his friends had admitted to having a connection with All Might, though Izuku knew that he couldn't trust everything that they told him, and it wouldn't make sense for 19 heroes that the rest of the world doesn't believe exists to be closely related to All Might, the symbol of peace, one of the most recognizable celebrities in Japan, if not the world. "Young Midoriya," All Might says. Izuku dredges up a smile. "It's okay. I've been trying to find these heroes since I was little. No one else knows that they exist. I shouldn't have put pressure on you to know them, either." All Might squints out at the trash pile, haloed by the sinking afternoon sun. "Heroes that the rest of the world are unaware of? That does sound familiar, actually." "They're not underground heroes," Izuku says. "Most of their quirks aren't even suited for that kind of work." "No," All Might says. "That's not what I meant. When I was younger, well before I joined UA, I ran into a group of heroes that no one else knew existed." Izuku perks up. "Really? What were they like?" "I never saw their faces," All Might says. "They wore matching jumpsuits and helmets that covered their faces and necks, dark-colored and nondescript. I almost thought they were villains trying to rob me at first, but no, they took down a few villains and then ran out of there before I had a chance to talk to them." "Helmets?" Izuku flips his journal open and holds up the picture of grenades. "One of my heroes wears a bike helmet." "It wasn't a bike helmet. It was more like a proper hero's helmet, something made by a support agency, but there was nothing else I could use to identify them." "Did you ever find out who they were?" Izuku asks. "No," All Might says. "They weren't underground heroes. I asked around. I always thought that maybe they worked for some kind of covert operation?" Izuku suggests. All Might nods, yes. Izuku sighs and puts his journal down. I don't think it's that for my heroes, at least. They're too noticeable to be chosen for secret missions. I'm sorry, All Might says. It's okay, Izuku says again. All Might must feel bad about not being able to help. He lays a large hand on Izuku's curls and says awkwardly, The thing I said about stranger danger is still important. Don't give out personal details about your life or meet up with someone you met online. You don't actually know who they are. Izuku laughs. Thanks, Dad, I know. They both stiffen. Izuku can feel his cheeks heat up. It might be a trick of the light, but he thinks All Might flushes pink, too. I had better get training, Izuku chokes out, waving his hands around so fiercely that he almost smacks All Might in the stomach. I was late, and there's only so much time. Yep, training. Plus ultra. Izuku ducks under All Might's arm and sprints up the side of the garbage pile, making a beeline for the rotting pot plants at the very top. If Izuku hadn't run off, he might have seen All Might staring at his hand, forgetting about Izuku's battered notebook, as he instead memorized the phantom feel of Izuku's coarse curls against his fingers. Izuku is so worked up about the entrance exam that he almost misses her. He would have missed her if she hadn't tapped him before he fell face first into the sidewalk. The feeling of weightlessness and the accompanying rush of excitement is the same as when he was 5 years old. She's almost the same too. Bubbly smile and flushed cheeks and bouncy brown hair. Her face is rounder and her hair is shorter than he remembers, but it's her. It's her. Floaty girl. Floaty girl if she was a teenager. Are you okay? She asks. Izuku chokes on his own tongue. He's too overwhelmed to get out anything coherent before she's wishing him luck and skipping away. Izuku walks into the auditorium and finds his assigned seat in a daze, barely registering Kacchan grinding his teeth in the seat beside his. His thoughts are a mess. How is this possible? He had always thought Floaty Girl was an adult. She had definitely been an adult the last time he saw her. Even if she had been a young teenager when she first saved him, almost 10 years had passed since then, and the girl who stopped his fall looked as though she was Izuku's age. If she looked somewhere around 14 to 16 now, then she would have had to have been roughly 5 years old when he first met her, and she definitely hadn't been. Floaty Girl must have a younger sister or cousin. That's the only explanation that makes sense. Siblings often look alike and have similar quirks. It would also explain why the girl didn't recognize him. Should he track down the girl with the anti-gravity quirk? Would it be too invasive to ask about her older sister? You there! Izuku's head snaps up. The auditorium is silent. A tall boy in glasses is glaring at him over rows and rows of seats. Izuku chokes on his spit.
Is that almost ingenium?
Okay, new theory. None of this is real, and Izuku has begun to hallucinate from the stress of it all. He's probably face down somewhere in the street, and only imagined heading out to take the entrance exam. Did All Might's hair do this to him? Izuku's head hurts. Floaty Girl's sister and the boy that yelled at him are both at the same testing area as Izuku. He tries to edge around the crowd of students to talk to her, but the tall boy seeks him out. You shouldn't disrupt exam goers. Izuku stares up at the boy while he lectures him. He's tall. His blue hair is neat and well-groomed. He has a square jaw and glasses and engines in his legs, and Izuku definitely knows this boy. Almost Ingenium? The boy stops. Excuse me? Ingenium is my older brother. Older brother. Of course, this boy is also Izuku's age, and so he cannot be the person that first rushed Izuku to safety all those years ago. Except, Ingenium has engines in his arms, Izuku says. The boy gives him a strange look. Yes, quirks often mutate slightly as they are passed from parent to child, so it's rare for siblings to have identical quirks. But we aren't here to discuss my family. You should stop attempting to distract everyone around you. You may not take this seriously, but the rest of us... Present Mike cuts through almost Ingenium's lecture. The test begins abruptly, while Izuku is still staring up at the boy in dazed horror, trying to slot together decades-old puzzle pieces. Izuku runs blindly into the testing area. He can't blow this. All Might is counting on him. He can't get distracted. Prince Charming is here. Like almost Ingenium and Floaty Girl's sister, he is Izuku's age. His hair is shorter, and instead of a billowing cape, he's wearing a tracksuit, but the naval beam and French accent are unmistakable. The teenager even winks at Izuku, the same way Prince Charming used to wink at him when he was younger. 3 young versions of his childhood heroes have appeared within the space of a few hours. What does this mean? Izuku flails in the middle of the chaotic exam. He's too worked up. His hands are getting all cold and sweaty, and there's not enough air, and his brain won't shut up. A towering robot thunders down the street. All the other students turn tail and run. Izuku spots Floaty Girl's sister trapped beneath rubble, struggling to free herself. His mind blanks out. His feet move on their own. In the weeks after the entrance exam, Izuku throws himself into theorizing to take his mind off his crumbling dream. He speeds through a fresh notebook while writing up notes and brainstorming and sketching the 3 teenagers he ran into at the exam. Nothing adds up. No matter how many times he goes over the facts, none of it makes sense. What is the chance all 3 of his childhood heroes, 3 heroes who no one else seems to know of, including All Might, have siblings his age who all decided to take the UA entrance exam? It doesn't sound too impossible. Plenty of heroes have younger siblings, and many children of hero families are encouraged to go into heroics. But how could they all have identical quirks as their older counterparts? Why is Izuku the only person that knows Floaty Girl and Prince Charming exist? Why does he remember a slightly different ingenium to the rest of the world? In April, Izuku starts his high school career. UA's campus is huge. When he finally arrives at Class 1A, he pauses outside the door. Kacchan was accepted into the hero course, too. Izuku is dreading coming across him during school, doubly so if they end up being assigned to the same class, but he's stronger now. He's not a quirkless kid left behind by the rest of the world. He can face Kacchan head-on. But he can't stop thinking about the 3 teenagers who look eerily similar to Floaty Girl, Almost Ingenium, and Prince Charming, the kids related to his childhood heroes in some way. Did they pass the entrance exam? They must have. Izuku can't imagine a world in which they failed. Will they be in his class? How does he act normal around them if they are? Izuku takes a steadying breath. He can't get lost in his head. He almost failed the entrance exam because he overthought everything. He can't sabotage his high school career, too. Izuku opens the door to Class 1A and, for a moment, he's sure that he's walked straight into a dream. Baby-faced versions of his childhood friends are seated in neat rows. They're dressed in matching uniforms and wearing bland expressions as they watch Almost Ingenium, Ida Tenya, the boy says, bicker with Kacchan. There is Alien Queen. Her pink skin looks even brighter against the grey of the uniform blazer. And there is Electro, with his yellow hair, a streak of black zigzagging through his fringe. There is Earphone, twirling her ears around one finger. There, right in front of him, are over half of his childhood heroes, staring as Izuku chokes on air. His mouth is open, but no sound is coming out, just the hollow rattle of air sucked through his lungs. Good morning. Almost Ingenium marches over to meet him. I'm from Somei Private Academy. My name is... I heard... Izuku interrupts, and then immediately regrets it. That sounded rude. He doesn't want them to think he's rude. He continues on bravely. I'm Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Ida. Ida praises him for realizing there was more to the exam when, in fact, Midoriya had been running on blind instinct for the entire 10 minutes. Oh, that curly hair! Izuku spins around and almost swallows his tongue. Floaty Girl's sister. You're the plain-looking one. You passed, just like President Mike said. She looks good in her uniform. Ida looks good in it too. Tall and fit and attractive, like they were born to wear these uniforms, unlike Izuku, who twisted his tie into a too short knot and spent almost 20 minutes staring at himself in the mirror, trying to come to terms with his reflection. Standing in his bathroom while wearing the nationally famous UA uniform made him feel like an alien, an imposter. But none of his classmates look ruffled. They're calm, bored almost, when Izuku's head is spinning because he's at UA. He has a quirk, and he's surrounded by over a dozen teenagers who look like the spitting image of his childhood heroes. Go somewhere else if you want to play at making friends. This is the hero course. Their homeroom teacher is bundled up in a yellow sleeping bag on the floor, sucking at a juice packet. This isn't the oddest thing to happen to Izuku today, and it isn't even 9 a.m. At least he doesn't recognize the shaggy man from years-old memories. If, say, the operator was his homeroom teacher, Izuku might have finally broke down crying right there in the doorway. The quirk assessment is stressful and requires his full concentration, but Izuku spends the time gazing at his classmates with quiet wonder. His chest hurts. There's something too big there, pressing up against his ribs, and he doesn't know why. This doesn't feel like the time he first met All Might. That had felt like exploding from the inside out, like his entire life had been leading up to the moment that he was on his knees and choking on bile and slime, looking up at his idol and struggling to find words. This feels like accidentally stumbling across old friends. This feels like rewatching a favorite childhood series and rediscovering why you were so enthralled with this world, these characters. This is coming home to find a long-lost family member sat at the kitchen table, only to realize that they can't remember who you are. Izuku wrenches his eyes away from Shift Hands, whose strength grip reached over 500 kilograms like it was nothing, and accidentally catches Aizawa's eye. He's staring at him, watching him. How long has he been doing that? Izuku passes the quirk assessment, but barely. Today is their first block of hero training, led by All Might. They're receiving their costumes this morning. The too big feeling in his chest is back. It's a feeling that Izuku has been carrying since he first woke up to water in his ears and All Might's smile swimming above him. Izuku changes into his costume in a trance. Mum made this for him. It's a tribute to the two heroes in his life, his mum and All Might, and he will wear it with pride. He has to take a moment in the change rooms to breathe and calm himself down in case he starts crying in front of his classmates. By the time he's dressed, everyone is already down at ground beta, grouped in front of All Might, admiring each other's costumes. Izuku jogs out of the tunnel. His class comes into view, and suddenly the afternoon sun seems ice cold, freezing Izuku right through. Uraraka meets him at the mouth of the tunnel, dressed in her own hero costume. A bubbly, soft pink costume. A costume similar to the one he has known for 10 years. A costume almost like the one he has sketched over and over again. Floaty Girl's costume. Uraraka claps her hands together and smiles like she isn't in the process of destroying Izuku's mind. Deku! Your costume looks really cool, really down to earth. Your costume, Izuku says, ignoring the compliment that might normally make him too flustered to piece together a coherent response. It's... Uraraka rubs at the back of her head. I should have written down what I wanted. I ended up getting a skin-tight bodysuit. It's embarrassing. No, you look great. Battle-ready and also very pretty, Izuku says on autopilot. He's too overwhelmed to be self-conscious. Uraraka isn't. She flushes behind her translucent visor. Was it inspired by something? Someone? An existing hero or a family member? I was too busy and too nervous to think of anything concrete that I wanted, not like everyone else. Uraraka plays with the baubles wrapped around her wrist. Izuku's heart twists. The gesture is so familiar. I wrote down my quirk and my measurements, and that I liked heroes with space aesthetics, and they created this, I suppose. You look great, Uraraka. Ida's voice floats through a solid helmet. Uraraka shakes off her nervousness and jumps around Ida, complimenting his costume, while Ida stands tall and pretends not to be as pleased by the praise as he clearly is. Izuku unsticks his tongue from the roof of his mouth. Ida, your costume, it was inspired by your brother, right? Ingenium, yes, Ida says, standing up even straighter. I am honored to be part of the Ida family. My brother is the person I look up to the most. So cool, Uraraka says again. What does this mean? Izuku's hands itch. He wishes he had his notebook with him so he could write all of this down. He's going to need another journal soon. He's gotten more notes about this mystery in the past few months than he has had in years. Uraraka floats away to compliment a few other girls on their costumes, and Ida strides away to scold someone for playing around with their suit. Izuku stands there, a few feet out of the tunnel, staring out at his class. All of them are dressed like his childhood heroes. All of them, aside from Mineta, who doesn't resemble anyone from his past, and Todoroki, whose features match the Ice Prince, but whose all-white costume is different from the blue jumpsuit Izuku remembers, and Kacchan, who is wearing orange, green, and black. Kacchan, who has the familiar orange cross over his chest, and the grey knee pads, and the clunky grenades strapped over his gloves. Kacchan has an explosion quirk. Izuku remembers being off-balanced at the similarities between his savior's quirk and the quirk used against him every other day in elementary school. Maybe it's not similar. Maybe it's the same quirk. The same. All Might calls the class to order. Izuku makes his way through the crowd of classmates on autopilot. All Might's instructions wash over him, all white noise, because he's too busy staring at his classmates, who look like miniature replicas of his childhood heroes. There's Froppy, her tongue hanging out of her mouth, dressed in yellow and green. There's Prince Charming with his costume glinting in the sun. There's Yellow Might in his banana yellow suit. There's Earphone, and Alien Queen, and Red, and Grenade's green and orange costume on Kacchan. The costumes aren't identical to the ones Izuku remembers. Kaminari's costume is black and white with silver highlights, where Electro's suit was predominantly silver. Izuku remembers the way his metallic jumpsuit caught the sunlight when he played with him, glittering like a disco ball. Floaty Girl's costume was almost entirely pale pink, where Uraraka has more than one color in hers. Yaoyorozu's costume is entirely different to Genesis's. She doesn't even have pants right now.
Hero costumes change over the years,
All Might had said months ago on that trash-heaped beach, staring down at Izuku's battered hero journal.
A hero's suit may look very different 10 years down the road.
Izuku's throat closes up. No, it can't be. Izuku's eyes flick to Kacchan, glowering at the ground instead of looking at any of their classmates or All Might, his fists clenched, practically vibrating with pent-up energy. If this insane theory holds true, then that would mean that... No. All Might starts sectioning off the class into pairs. Izuku wants to crawl away and find an empty classroom, curl into a tight ball, and scream into his hands. He can't do that, even if it feels like his brain is melting out of his ears. His childhood friends are precious to him, but his dream, his burning, beautiful dream of being a hero, is everything. He can't fall to pieces now. Izuku shoves his hand into the air. All Might, could you please repeat the instructions? I didn't, hear any of that. Overwhelmed, young Midoriya? All Might asks. Izuku laughs shakily and rubs at the back of his head. The class titters behind him. It sounds good-natured. Someone behind him says that they're overwhelmed too. He thinks it might be Electro. At the back of the class, Kacchan doesn't mock him for being spacey. They're divided into pairs, and when Kacchan and Ida circle around them to head into the building, Kacchan gives him a look that Izuku can't decipher. Kacchan confronts him that afternoon, after Izuku is released from the nurse's office. He can't remember the last time he saw Kacchan cry. After everything comes out about One for All, Kacchan opens his mouth to say something else, but then, after glancing at All Might, snaps it shut again. Is there anything else, young Bakugo? All Might asks. This is a safe space. Feel free to share anything. Honesty is a valuable trait in a hero. Kacchan looks at Izuku. He's been looking at him since he was accepted into UA, trying to work out how Izuku had passed the exam without a quirk, but this seems different somehow. Kacchan doesn't look like he wants to incinerate Izuku. His gaze is searching, almost. Izuku swallows. Kacchan? Kacchan rubs tears and snot off his chin, and then sneers. No, I have nothing to say to either of you fuckers. I'll beat you to the top, no matter who you are, or what shitty quirk you've been given, or what you did when I was a kid. All Might doesn't seem to know what to do with Kacchan. Was he this awkward with Izuku at first, or had it been different for them? He doesn't remember. Most of his memories of that time in his life are blurry with shock, hero worship, and sheer exhaustion. Friendly competition can be healthy, All Might says. In correct dosages, of course. Get fucked, Kacchan tells All Might, their mutual idol, their teacher, before turning on his heel and jogging away. A very brash young man, All Might says, mostly to himself. Izuku stares after Kacchan, broken arm cradled to his chest. His heavy cast presses against a bruise the size of a fist on his sternum. Yeah, Izuku says. You could say that. End of Chapter 2, Part 1. We are finally at UA. I'm so excited. I hope you all are enjoying this fic as much as I am. If so, please let the original author know, and if you're enjoying this podfic, please let me know. Thanks for joining.